You're listening to the Ask Drone U podcast. You ask, we answer your drone questions. Whether you're here to turn your passion into profit or you simply fly for fun, we're a community of learners and teachers who aspire to achieve greatness. We are
Drone U.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ask Drone U. My name is Paul.
And I'm Rob. Super glad to be hanging out with you. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes of your day with us. Man, we appreciate it. And I don't know why I'm talking at 1.3. I listen to podcasts at 1.2, 1.3. I think you do too, right?
I do too, yeah.
Yeah, or YouTube or wherever they'll let you. So maybe I'm talking that way all of a sudden because that's how I listen.
Well, hey, I mean, you know what? You talk fast. You typically are trying to get a lot of information out there.
Yeah.
There's a danger, obviously, in talking too fast, but...
Or too slow.
Or too slow.
No, seriously, we are thankful, just happy to be here and to know that there's at least a couple of you out there listening.
Yeah, today we've got an interesting show, and I would say that this is really for our high precision mappers, our people who are in engineering, they're in surveying, they've got to have a high degree of accuracy. And I'm really glad that this question is coming up because it showcases the maturity of the industry. It showcases that drone mapping photogrammetric engines cannot be like consumer electronics and dumb down the user experience and still expect to get high degrees of accuracy. And I think, you know, one of the fundamental things I talk about in the mapping class all the time is, and I'll pull up Drone Deploy, I'll pull up Propellor, I'll pull up Maps Made Easy, I'll pull up, there's almost all of them are like this. But I'll show in Pix4D where we are marking GCPs, and I teach them that how much you zoom into that photo and mark that GCP will have a mathematical consequence to your absolute accuracy, meaning how much you zoom in and mark that photo is going to have an impact on your overall accuracy. And the way that I try to explain this in class is, you know, Rob, if I had a tape measure in my hand and I wanted to measure this wall, would you be looking at the tape measure from 10 feet away? Or would you want to be essentially at eyesight, you know, 6 to 12 inches away from the tape saying, okay, 4 feet, 1 inch and 3/8? You know?
Yeah, especially at my age.
Well, I mean, man, I'm not touching that one.
My eyes are starting to go.
I heard some...
I guess there are 10-year-olds whose eyes are going, so I shouldn't make it about age.
I wonder how much is genes, too, because we just had a student who said, as soon as I turned 50, my eyes just went. And I mean, Rob just made it over the hump, and he's doing just fine.
No, that's crazy. Yeah.
I mean, my dad had eye issues from the very get-go.
Oh, yeah. No, that's funny. I turned 50. I don't think it works that way. But you know what? Placebo. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever.
But going back to the analogy of looking at a tape measure, you want to be up close so you can actually see where that real line is. You know, think of science class when you're measuring water in a beaker and they tell you to get eye level with the water so you can see exactly where 8 ounces is. You know, it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how accurate you need to be. Like if I'm just, okay, looks like 36 inches wide. So, yeah, it looks like 72 inches. Look about.
Well, and that's
6
actually,
feet.
I think, an issue that in the maturity of the drone industry and especially photogrammetry is going to become an issue because it's very subjective, especially when a lot of people are doing maps and models for engineering purposes, but they're getting very subjective about the workflows of creating these maps that they're making very important decisions off of. So, you know, kind of back to my example of zooming all the way in, marking that GCP, most of these cloud processors, the very best one that I have seen was Drone Deploy, where you can zoom in halfway to an image, not 100%, but halfway. So if you think about it, if you are only able to zoom in halfway or even 75% or 80% and not all the way down to pixel level, your accuracy will have a negative consequence because of just that trigonomic effect right there, okay?
Which may or may not be important in that particular application, deliverable, etc.
True, but
so you have to know that.
True, but in the wake of an audience of engineers, surveyors, and in construction, and I mean construction legal decisions, not construction like progression, not construction like marketing, not like, non-georeference orthos used in time lapses, none of that.
Right.
Okay, but when talking about the audience of engineers, surveyors, geospatial intelligence, anything that has anything to do with geospatial information, then I think it's crucial to understand that a lot of these cloud softwares are really simplifying the user interface to make it easier to create these maps and models. What's the consequence of that? Much poorer accuracy. And in a lot of these cloud softwares, you can't even pull up things like ellipsoid error to determine how accurate the human element of marking the GCPs was. And this has nothing to do with the other 3 points I want to make after we listen to this question, because
we haven't even listened to the question yet.
No, because there are some very real issues in regards to this very particular question. So I think it also proves another point about a lot of hype and marketing in this industry about, hey, you only need one GCP to do georeference maps and models. That's horse caca. Okay, that is about as good as eating a Snickers bar off of a hot sidewalk on a 110-degree day. It just doesn't work. So that said, I didn't have a better analogy. I was trying to think of one of the crazy Southern things.
That does
I've
sound
heard.
pretty horrible.
Yeah.
So we'll go with it.
So I wanted to be like, it's about as accurate as a cow pissing off the side of a cliff and landing on a rock. Remember one of our students said something like that once, and I was like, huh?
I'd go back to the Snickers one.
All right. Well, before we get to the question, our question today is brought to you by our in-person classes. We are back to traveling. We thought before all the mass stuff ended that we would kind of get back to normal this year. That said, we've got classes in Denver and we've got classes in Dallas coming up. And if you're wondering why, it's because here at Drone U, we are moving our headquarters from an aviation market that's representative of 1.48 billion to an aviation market that's representative of 48.6 billion. I'll let you do the data dump and figure out where we're moving. All right, Rob, play that question.
Hi guys, my name is Bob and I work for a construction company in Western Pennsylvania. We use the Phantom 4 Pro RTK for topographical surveys of our job sites, and I was wondering if you can compare Pix4D to Propellor for data processing. We are currently with Propellor, and we were sold on that you only need one aeropoint for surveys on sites up to 100 acres, and Propellor processing the data sets for us. But I've encountered issues with aeropoints completely failing during surveys and getting data back with massive errors that aren't being caught by their data team. In our experience, our customer service has been rather poor, and we are ready to take our money elsewhere. I was looking to switch to Pix4D, but was concerned about the amount of ground control points and the time they require to set them up. So I want to get your thoughts on the two and what you would recommend. I appreciate your time and look forward to hearing your answer. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you for the detailed question. We love that because it makes it easier to answer and to answer in a more detailed way. So,
Sure does.
Take it away, Paul.
Okay there, Bob. Let me get right into the news of photogrammetry.
There you go.
In our first piece, Paul will be answering this question. Rob will act like he doesn't know much, but he actually does know a good fair amount. So, that said, Bob, back to you. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Anyway, Good show. Okay, so first thing I want to mention, I did not hear this the first time we listened to the question, but heard it on the second time. He mentioned that he creates topographical maps for surveying. I do want to say that Pix4D Mapper doesn't do the best job of topographical maps. We have a lot of clients who create their orthos, point clouds, and other data deliverables, and then put it into Esri, ArcGIS, and create their topos there. I know that Pix4D Survey, that might do a better job. I personally don't know. I know that they've tailored Pix4D Survey for certain surveying deliverables, such as the ability to remove planimetrics and whatnot. So that said, that it would be something that I would ask you to investigate, Pix4D Mapper versus Survey. Now, that said, this kind of alludes to what I was explaining in the beginning of the show, that when you're using a cloud-based software, you have a lot of limitations in what you can control. How you mark GCPs, error on the X, Y, and Z, understanding what your true absolute error is, etc. that also is outside and mutually exclusive from this ideology of using just one aeropoint or just one GCP. Now, I will say, because I'm sure once Propeller hears this show that we're going to get a phone call, I will say in every class, every mapping class that we teach, we go over aeropoints, okay? We love aeropoints. We think that they're great. But also in every class, I talk about how you've got to have more GCPs than what you need, because with aeropoints, sometimes you don't always know if the aeropoint has an error and is not collecting data.
You don't know until post, essentially.
Yes, and that's because
And that's what he's describing he's running into.
Exactly, because aeropoints are a PPK GPS. They're a post-processed kinematic GPS, meaning if you have errors collecting the data in the field, you don't figure it out until long after you've left the job site, right? And that could be a problem, which is why a lot of people prefer RTK GPS. I'm going to be putting out some new information on our MLIT RS2. That thing, the developments that they have made are phenomenal. It's a phenomenal product. Truly love it. That said, if you need GCP targets, because don't forget, GCPs are two-part, one part GPS, one part target. If you want to learn why so many people buy our mapping landing pads, I highly recommend picking up a set of those landing pads. And this was my humble opportunity to sell landing pads, so thank you. But I mean, that said, there are pros and cons between PPK and RTK GPS. One of the things that I will say, whether it's PPK or RTK, having just one GCP, in my humble opinion, is not sufficient. Because if there is an error on that GCP for whatever reason, whether it's an aeropoint, whether it's RTK GPS, you ruin the whole project and then you have to go do it over again. And so if you've got multiple GCPs or multiple aeropoints, you can still use that data, negate the bad GCP, and still get a deliverable. The last 3 mapping classes that we've had, I've had 2 aeropoints fail.
Wow.
2 times because of interference, another time because the data didn't upload. We tried uploading again, it still didn't work. So that said, there's a couple issues here. One, I think having just one GCP is a marketing / hype thing. And by the way, I was at the DJI conference where Propeller first advertised using the P4P RTK with just one aeropoint and being able to do everything. And I looked over at my buddy who knows surveying and I was like, there's just too much that can go wrong and you've got no redundancy. And what is the fundamental...
Seems obvious.
Yeah, and what is one of the fundamental things we're taught as pilots that should also transgress into other things that we do? Redundancy, right? Mm-hmm. Having multiple forms to complete the same problem or solve the same problem. So that said, when it comes to using Propeller over Pix4D, the benefit of Pix4D is it's a desktop application. You control your data. You control all the settings. You can mark GCPs in the simple editor or in the full-blown editor, which we teach. You have so much more control over that data. There's thousands of file types that you can get depending on what you want. And there are hidden menus to get certain files out, like a shapefile. So that said, I would recommend Pix4D Mapper. And again, Survey might be better for topographical maps, just FYI. I would recommend Pix4D Mapper because I can control my data. I own my data. Yes, the workflow is complicated, but I also know in these jobs that require this high precision, you need to have that control.
It's complicated.
It's complicated.
It's complicated. That's what happens when I go a couple minutes without speaking.
Oh, No,
that was not a hint.
Okay.
That was a... Anyways, it's complicated, but it can be systematized such that it no longer is complicated. Which,
again, I think is one of the values in us teaching the class that we have is we've taught it so much. We have methodologies to make these systems easier to retain and apply.
So, I mean, yeah, you're going to do some work up front. It's like anything good. I'm overgeneralizing today, it seems, but you can take complication and systematize it and create these usable, repeatable systems, and then it's no longer complicated. You just do it. And so, yeah, you'd have a little work up front, but it's worth the work.
Yeah, and by the way, if you're really interested in systematizing, jeez,
I messed up the flow.
I done did it. If you have issues where you need full scale, Pix4D offers instruction on how to use things like Azure, AWS, these cloud processing servers, so that you can set up projects exactly how you want every single time with the craziest settings ever to get exactly what you want, but use cloud processors to scale it. I mean, you essentially create your own cloud, software.
We don't even teach that in the class right now, do we?
But when it comes up in questions, I talk about it.
Okay.
It all depends on the audience, Rob.
No, and that's true. That's fair.
Which is a part of being an instructor is being able to read the audience. Okay, what level are these guys at?
Yeah, what do they need? What are their goals?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now that said, I personally love Propellor in their processing and their cloud system because they can show progress over time for cut and fill. Like I honestly think their volume visualizations are probably the best on the internet right now. But again, you don't have an astronomical amount of control of the data, which is problematic, especially when you're in surveying, especially when you're in engineering, especially when you're in these verticals that require a very high degree of accuracy. And if you're using a cloud processor where you can't even see the ellipsoid error, you can't even see the projection error, and you don't even know what a good, let's say, cap is on projection error, let alone be able to see that information, then how are you ever going to be able to verify your data and your deliverable? How are you ever going to be able to stand behind it and say, yes, it's good to go. Yes, it's absolutely accurate to X degree. This is a really important point. And it's something that I try to talk about every single time during these mapping classes, because a lot of people so Paul, how come you don't teach more on these other cloud engines? I'm like, well, we're about to go over drone deploy, but in an effort to be a good instructor, I need to teach you comprehensively. And in an effort to give you everything that you need to produce all these different deliverables, I want to teach you on a software that empowers you to do that. I don't want to teach you on a cloud-based software that focuses so primarily on the user interface that you lose all of these controls. You lose all these abilities to save data and rework data, remanipulate data, and you're really limited. And that can be job crushing. I have actually seen it happen dozens of times. No single cloud processor, they're all guilty. And then they try to, make it even more simple and easy to use. For example, what's the name of the company? Maps Made Easy. They have a new processing engine. They actually gave us credits to test it. And I went in there to go create a new project. And it's like, well, your photos are more than 70 degrees of tilt. We can't take these photos. And I'm like, sick. So I can't literally create some of the most highly valuable, high dollar, deliverables that my clients want with this, but you're advertising that it does 3D models, but it doesn't. So now they do a great job though of just creating georeference orthos. But I would rather do that with Pix4D Mapper because I can look at my quality report, I can look at projection error, I can look at ellipsoid error. And if my ellipsoid isn't plumb to the ground and it's, cockeyed like this bottle of water that I'm holding, well then I know, okay, well I marked too many images over on this side of the GCP and I need to redistribute to photos over here. And a lot of people don't even know how in Pix4D to show which photos were marked so that you can look at the GCP and the photos that you marked like changing a tire, meaning that the photos that you mark around the GCP are in a relative circle. Okay, because again, if you have too many photos on one side, you get this error, this oblique error from one side to another. This will throw off your absolute accuracy. These are things that people don't talk about because they don't want you to know that these things exist, because as soon as you know that they exist, you start to realize just how accurate your maps and models really are.
Or are not.
Exactly. I rest my case there, Bob.
Yeah, I think ultimately too, though, it does come down to the user, their needs, and the ultimate deliverables. And a lot of those
Agreed.
other solutions are more than adequate in fact, good at a lot of those deliverables.
Well, yeah, let's take a non-georeference orthomosaic, right? Pix4D React, $30 a month, fastest generator of orthos out there, right? But a lot of people don't know you can only shoot single grid nadir. If you do a double grid and there's even a slight oblique, your roof lines are going to be jacked. So, there, like you said, well, we got to look at this at like a nuance level, Paul. Deliverables, client, needs. And you're so right. And that's how we attack every client who comes to us that says, hey, I need training for my team. They do this. Okay, what's your deliverable? It's just like when we onboard a new team for props. What are the deliverables? I don't want to hear what you think your pilots need to do. What are the deliverables?
Right.
You tell me and I'll tell you what you need to learn.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Sorry to be aggressive, but it's true. So
yeah, I guess there are different ways to communicate that. Anyways, there's Paul Way.
Yes. There's the Rob, very nice, very gentle.
Apparently like Trump.
No. And then there's me, and I'm going to tell you like it is. And you're going to realize 4 years later that I was right.
Oh, gosh.
It was a little political joke over there.
Oh, man. Anywho, this project that we're currently in the middle of and the things that they are doing with respect to commercial roofing and the use of Maps Made Easy, it seems to really be working in their workflows.
Yeah.
Right?
And again, a lot of these cloud softwares have great systems for very specific deliverables, right? But they all advertise them as these macro solutions to all these various problems. And that is just not true.
Yeah.
And if you think about the way that they go about, processing, it can't be true. Now, this is where you got to give Drone Deploy a little bit of credit, even though Drone Deploy guys, you guys still need to fix your mesh stuff. You need to be able to let people make MTPs. You want to crush all the other, software engines. There are 3 things that you could do. And if you give me $250,000, I'll tell you what they are. Now, no, I'm just kidding. But that said, that said, Drone Deploy. Back to what I was saying. Drone Deploy is getting really smart and wise about this. Their CEO, I have the utmost respect for. I really love him. He is very, very, very smart. They are determining which photogrammetric engine to use based off the deliverable.
Interesting.
Now that's next level.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So,
and it's doing it algorithmically? I mean, wow.
Now they're not there yet, in my humble opinion, but they are very close.
Well, all you can do is keep working towards it, right?
Oh, that's how
Until
AI and machine learning works, right?
Yeah.
The more data you throw at it, the better the algo becomes. So
that's cool.
I mean, I think that's a process that we all need to understand too. It's like, Elon Musk's Starlink. Well, we need users to use this thing to figure out how to, the bugs and what to do. And people jump on board because he's very clear cut and, hey, it's not going to be perfect at first, but we need your help to make it perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So, and the reward is you're grandfathered into the pricing. Because if it's anything like Comcast, chances are your price will double every 2 years. So,
ish, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Cutting that bill out was amazing. Sorry, Comcast.
I don't apologize.
No, I'm not. I save $196 a month right now, thanks to Bloomberg. So thanks, Bloomberg. Yeah. That said, when it comes to having highly accurate topographical maps, orthomosaics, georeference orthos, georeference topos, Pix4D Mapper, in my opinion, is going to give you the best accuracy. We even provide the statistics behind that. Now, don't forget, there is the human element. How you mark GCPs is trigonomically going to affect the way that your accuracy is produced and formulaically produced as well. That was not a good sentence, but you understand what I mean.
If I may, Bob, a quick plug. A lot of what Paul's talking about here, you would learn in the mapping class.
100%.
In the in-person mapping class.
100%.
So, I don't know. It might be a way to sort of speed up, straighten the learning curve, or at least lessen the learning curve for getting something like Pix4D in place instead of Propellor, if that's the way you choose to go, is by accelerating that learning process through the mapping class plug over.
By the way, the audience of the highly technical people, like engineers, civil engineers, architects, surveyors, they're my favorite group to teach because you can just right in, like dive right in, and like no one's lost, everyone's right there. And look, we all come from different places, myself included, okay? That's a long learning curve for me. I really, my technical skills were highly limited. Nonetheless, did I believe I was actually capable, and look where I am now. So that said, everything is possible, but you know, it's kind of like the K. Anders Ericsson's perfect practice model. In order to be the best, you have to, one, believe you can do it, and two, put yourself in situations where you're constantly being challenged with new problems, different variables and whatnot. And I feel like drone mapping and having all these different exercises does exactly that. Which, by the way, you know, we went from teaching the mapping class with 5 exercises. The last class, we went through 8.
Really?
Yeah, 8. Because that repetition, it's night and day difference in having people retain the information, especially the super deep, nuanced systems of getting this accuracy. They get it through the repetition.
Yeah.
So, but I am really proud. I had a student last class who on exercise 4, which is essentially like our accuracy challenge, we want to see where students are. It's our way to kind of verify what you're learning and if you're capable to repeat what you've learned. Man, I had a student who got 0.001 RMS error.
Wow.
Now, I know technically when you look at a 20 megapixel image that's not possible, but this is what Pix4D is saying the RMS error was. Obviously, we would have to take that and put it in a third-party software to truly discern absolute accuracy. I just want to make that clear. But I was so impressed with this student. I mean, he nailed it. Absolutely nailed it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Love it. That's invigorating in some ways as an instructor.
I love seeing people succeed. And like, I'm like, yes. Because like I'll be down because like there's certain type of students that I'm still, you know, I'm not perfect. I'm still working on. There's certain types of students that I kind of struggle with. I'm getting better though. The overthinkers, or we talked about this last time, and I have to be careful about how I say this, but there are people who ask so many questions, they don't give themselves the chance to think about the question and if they can answer it themselves. You know, you just get in this pattern of asking questions.
Do you think that's the Google Society?
That's a really good question.
We've gotten so used to just Google it, ask it.
And that's dangerous.
But it's a really difficult balance as well, even as an instructor or as the person in question, because you need to be able to ask questions and you need to be able to allow yourself to do so, right? And like essentially admit that you don't know something. But I hear what you're saying and be okay with it. But I hear what you're saying about at least run the gears a little bit to try to figure it out first.
Yeah, and if you had teachers in high school and college, they would do this to you. Like, well, think about this, think about that. Do you think it's possible to get what you're asking for? You know, and they would challenge you to think about it before they answer the question, right? And then that forces you to really learn it. And this is kind of me on my learning curve of instruction is like, how do I nicely and succinctly ask this person to, one, believe in your capability of answering the question, two, take 10 seconds, think it through, think about the different systems that we've discussed. Do you know the answer to this question? And if not, I'm happy to answer the question. But there are, and they're very rare, but there are students who just, it's rapid fire of questions. And it's like, have you even thought about the potential of the answers before you went 10 questions deep? Because with the answer to question number 3, 6, 7, and 8 would be answered right now, you know? And so it's like a succession of questions and you're like, But, so that's all. It's not, I don't mind questions, okay? That's what I'm trying to illustrate is everyone has questions. I'm talking about the habitual pattern question askers who aren't giving themselves the chance and the patience to answer it themselves. So
that's right. So don't worry about coming to an in-person class and be afraid of asking questions. That's not the point.
No, not at all. So I actually
run the gears.
I love a lot of the recent reviews that we've gotten of like, I was nervous coming to Paul's class? Because he seems a little
Thought he would have a Nerf gun.
outlandish.
Shooting us in the eye.
I do have Nerf guns, and I will shoot you. So I'm just kidding. I don't do that. But that's a good idea. Good idea, Rob.
Uh-oh. As long as we give them a Nerf gun, I'm down. So I can shoot you back.
Limited bullets, though.
No,
I get
no.
I get way more.
They get more bullets.
No. I get more.
Nuh-uh.
Then I'm gonna have to be really accurate and aim for right in the forehead.
You're the instructor.
Back to accuracy, Rob.
That's right.
On that bombshell, that's gonna do it for us today. My name is Paul.
I'm Rob.
And Rob's gonna be going to Target and getting us some Nerf guns.
That's right.